projecting as many 60 seats being turned over in the House, but not the Senate. A lot harder for the Republicans to be able to try to pull that one off.
And you can find all this and more, by the way, yourself at WFMZ.com at Election Central. Chris Borick from Muhlenberg College, a pollster, political analyst, political science professor, has been with us this evening to talk about these races. And Dr. Borick, Scott Rasmussen, the pollster, I guess he's one of your competitors. Do you think of it that way?
No.
He does polls too. Anyway, he said the other day that President Clinton's party lost power after he had won the presidency. The President Bush's party, same thing. And now he said the Obama administration is poised to make it 3 in a row. And what he said about that was this represents a fundamental rejection of both parties. It would be wise for Republicans to remember that they didn't win, the other team lost. Do you think he's on to something there? It's hard to make out what it is the voters are saying.
Sure, I agree. Well, I think what we see most of all right now is that the voters don't have a lot of patience. When you look at the history, if you will, of House control, you know, for 40 years, from the 50s to the 90s, Democrats controlled, and then Republicans controlled for 12 years, and now, after only 4 years, the Democrats are out of power and the Republicans are in control. So we do seem to be changing at a quicker and quicker pace. And in many ways, if you look at the poll numbers, there isn't a lot of brand popularity for the Republican Party this year. It just so happens that they are the party out of power, and there's no love for what's going on in Washington, and the Democrats are controlling. And in many ways, the Republicans are the benefactor of that. But I think it would be wrong to read it as an overall endorsement of the Republican Party right now and a rejection of the Democrats, like Rasmussen said, and more as a rejection of Washington. And the Democrats and Republicans now in a gridlock situation are going to have to see what they can do about that.
Yeah.
So where do the Democrats go from here now that they're looking at this?
Yeah, it's going to be the great mystery, if you will, or drama over the next few months in how the Democrats sort this out. It'll start tomorrow with President Obama making a speech to the country on what the midterm elections means. What kind of stance is he going to take? Is he going to take a conciliatory stance? Is he going to mix that in with some positions where he takes a stand and said he's not going to be willing to move? My bet is he's going to use that opportunity to make a conciliatory message to Republicans, a congratulatory message, and put out the hand to work with them. We'll see if Republicans are that interested, or if indeed President Obama is that interested in doing the same thing. So, and it'll also be interesting to see who takes over in the House in terms of Democratic leadership. Speaker Pelosi will be out of power. She will not go to a position of majority or minority leader. That's going to come up for somebody else, and we'll see if it's a blue dog Democrat or who rises to that level. So lots of intrigue, lots of changes coming for the Democratic Party in Washington.
And I guess it's safe to say the voters, or at least a large chunk of the voters, are more pragmatic than they are ideological.
Oh, I've always said that about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is as pragmatic as a political place as you're ever going to find, and very much middle of the road. And it's interesting, in the Senate race this night, which we've been following so closely, and there's so tight a race, that you have some candidate that's clearly to the right and clearly to the left, and they're about dead even in this state right now. The Pennsylvanians, I don't think, are necessarily in either of their camp. One of them's going to win tonight, but it remains a very moderate, very pragmatic state, a state that's looking for results. And for those new Republican elected officials, they'll have to please the public if they're going to stay, or they'll find the same result as Democrats found tonight.
We have a couple more seconds with you as we wait to hear from Patrick Murphy. We think he's going to speak soon in the 8th congressional district race. Regarding what you just alluded to, and that is the big Senate race in Pennsylvania, if I could just touch on that for a second. Last we checked, Pat Toomey has pulled back into the lead. Does that correspond to the numbers you're seeing?
Yeah, I've been looking at this one all night. I can't get away from it. It's just fixated on what's happening, so it's been so close. We're looking at least the last time I looked, at about a 30,000 vote gap in favor of Pat Toomey. I've been watching Montgomery County for the last hour. That's where a lot of the votes haven't come in yet, and in many ways that will determine the outcome, at least the way I've been looking at it. And I don't know now if there's going to be enough votes there at least to close that gap that we see. It's going to be close, but it's looking more and more like it might be Pat Toomey's night.
All right, Dr. Borick, thanks so much for your analysis and insights on things tonight. We sure appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right, very interesting in Pennsylvania, and it's interesting to note about the pragmatism of the voters in Pennsylvania.
Right.
1.5 million registration advantage for Democrats in the state of Pennsylvania. But the governor's office and both houses of the state legislature have gone Republican tonight.
That's right, and it looks like the Senate could possibly do that as well with Toomey. It seems like his lead growing as we dwindle here, so we shall see. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Murphy speaking now. Let's listen in.
My dad, Jack Murphy, used to say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Well, we stood up to make our country better. And for that, we should hold our heads held high. We fought for the father in Yardley, who worked tirelessly to secure a middle-class lifestyle for his family. Both laid off, and now is struggling to keep us home. We fought for the grandmother in Bristol, who has seen her life savings wiped out in a recession and is facing a scary and uncertain future. We fought for the veteran and hero returning from Afghanistan with deep battle scars, both those that are visible and those that cannot be seen. And for that kid in Northeast Philadelphia, we fought for him, even though he might care more about hockey than homework. But we want us to get a good education so he can try to make his life better.
Patrick Murphy conceding the race tonight in the 8th District in Bucks County. Little audio difficulty there, so we're going to leave him as he thanks his supporters in the 8th District congressional race.
All right, we're taking a look at the race for U.S. Senator now here in Pennsylvania. Pat Toomey, his lead seems to be growing here as we wrap up 96% of the district's reporting, and he is, about 120,000 votes, give or take a few, out in the lead right now. And that lead just seems to increase now for Pat Toomey. So I don't know. It was close for a while, but it may not be for much longer.
Yeah, it was. Sestak had led for much of the evening. It's interesting how that works. It depends which of those precincts is coming in when. And now as we wrap up those later precincts as they report, boost Pat Toomey, and the margin gets a little bit bigger. So that difficulty in Bucks County with the absentee ballots, it looks like it won't affect the 8th District race, in particular, where that was sort of a firestorm, but it also looks like it won't affect larger statewide races like this one as Toomey's margin gets bigger and bigger as the night goes on.
Yes. Okay, let's take a look at some of the state rep boards right now. This one for the 124th District. Jerry Knowles, the incumbent, holding on to that seat with a pretty significant win here for the Republican incumbent. 13,000 votes, 64%, about 2/3 of the vote in that race.
A longtime state rep Dante Santoni in Berks County, a Democrat. First time we've looked at this, and he will be going back to the state house. He avoided the Republican sweep in Pennsylvania tonight. He'll get a 10th term in the state house.
And on to the 128th District. This one, Mark Gillen. This seat was open. This was Sam Rohr's seat. He was retiring. He'd made a run for governor. And you can see the Republican, Mark Gillen, holding on to that seat for the Republicans in the 128th District.
All right, state legislature, more races. This is the 130th. David Maloney, one of a couple of David Maloney's running this year in different state races. And he will be your winner in the 130th, defeating the incumbent David Kessler. Here is a case where the Republicans make a pickup in the state house, putting them probably on their way to taking over the house. In fact, this would contribute to that.
That's right. We have Justin Simmons here, winning over Horton, the Democrat. This was Karen Byers' seat. She had lost in the primary to Simmons, and then Simmons here able to hold on to the seat, beating Mike Horton in this one in the 131st.
And the 133rd, the Democrat, this is the other David Maloney race. The Democrat, in this case, the incumbent Joe Brennan, will hold on to that seat. The Republican David Maloney gets 38% of the vote in that one in the 133rd.
Okay, moving on now to the 134th. This one, we heard from Reichley a little bit earlier this evening. The incumbent right here, Doug Reichley, winning without much of a problem with 68% of the votes here.
All right, so we cruise through a few more state legislative races. We have Bob Freeman, who has been in office for quite a long time in the Northampton County area, and he wins with almost 2/3 of the vote tally in the 136th district. Again, that Northampton County area.
All right, and moving on to the 137th district. This one with Joe Emmerich right now in the lead, in pretty hefty lead right now, about 2/3 of the votes right now for Joe Emmerich, the Republican, over Charles Derdinger in the 137th.
And the 143rd now, as we sweep down toward Bucks County in this race. Marguerite Quinn, the Republican, looks like she'll be taking that one over Kathy McQuarrie, the Democrat, and Tom Lingenfelter, who has run a number of times for different offices, pulling in just 4% of the vote in the 143rd. So that's a Republican race, a Republican hold.
That's right. Staying in Bucks right now for the 145th. We have the incumbent here, the Republican Paul Clymer, holding on to his seat without much of a problem. 66% of the votes for him, about 2/3 of the votes he was able to get in that race with 4 candidates in that one.
And the Republican is going to win this one, the 146th State House District. Thomas Quigley holds off a challenge from Mark Painter, the Democrat, in that race, in the 146.
And the 147th.
Let's keep on going up.
Sure. This is Montgomery County once again. We have Marcy Topol there, the Republican, winning out over Robert Dodge, the Democrat, right there at the 11,855 votes for her.
Another hold for the Republicans there, and another one here. Julie Harhart is an incumbent in 183rd, and she holds on easily. She takes 81% of the votes, and we have almost every precinct, in fact, every district but one, reporting in that race.
All right, and one final to show you right now. Once again, we have Gary Day, the Republican, taking this race over Richard Stein in the Berks-Lehigh area for 187th district.
All right, I don't know that we have final numbers in terms of how the state house has turned out, but it does look like there will be enough Republican pickups. It sounds like there will be. I should... a little caveat there. Sounds like there will be enough that the Republicans actually capture the state house as well as the U.S. House tonight.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we will be back with more Election Central. Okay, welcome back.
Welcome back. We know you are very astute, politically minded viewers, and so you've been following things very carefully. You know that most of our races are all sewn up. We're waiting to see what happens in the Sestak-Toomey race for U.S. Senate. So stay with us while we wait, and we look at a few other races.
That's right. I think we're heading over to New Jersey now.
We are.
And we have John Runyon, as we mentioned earlier, a name a lot of folks are familiar with, even if they're not in the New Jersey 3rd District, former Eagles player. Appears to have a victory here in the race. At least he's declared himself a victor. I think we've heard.
He didn't exactly flatten John Adler, as he did some defensive linemen in his day, but looks like he's won it.
Yes, right now.
That's the 3rd District race.
Yes.
Adler conceded.
Well, then
Adler
there you
conceded.
go.
That seems to be done. This one was an easy win for Republican Scott Garrett in New Jersey, holding on to that seat in that district, in western and parts of central New Jersey, over a Democratic challenger and a couple of other third parties candidates. 6th term for Garrett.
And now we're going to the 7th District. Here we have Leonard Lance, the incumbent, taking this one. Sticking with the Republicans, winning a lot of the seats and keeping the ones they had and taking a few from the Democrats here. And they're more than just a few, actually.
Right. It's been that kind of night for the Republican Party. On the other hand, look at this. When we last visited this race, the Republican challenger, Scott Supprell, was in the lead. But it does look like Republican incumbent Rush Holt will hold on to it and get a 7th term in Congress. So that looks like if this pans out this way, it's a hold for the Democrats.
Democrats holding on to that one. Now moving on to the freeholders. This is Hunterdon County freeholders race. We can voted for 2 here, and the 2 Republicans taking these with William Menon and George Mellick getting those seats.
All right, a couple of other local county level races in Hunterdon County. We had one unexpired term race to fill out here, where Robert Walton, the Republican, wins it rather handily over Democrat Samuel Thompson in Hunterdon County.
Now Warren County freeholder, this is a surrogate. This one, Kevin O'Neill, the Republican, winning that one rather handily over the Democrat Tammy Smith.
All right, we might expect in a Republican year that places like these with heavy Republican registration, the Republicans would do well. And indeed they are. Warren County Sheriff, the Republican is David Gallant, and he has 69% of the vote there to win the sheriff's race in Warren County tonight.
All right, on to some state Senate races right now. This one for the 14th District. We have John Udachak right there, the Democrat, winning this seat right here over Stephen Urban with 56%.
Other state Senate races, the ones that are followed closely in the Lehigh Valley. That's where the Lehigh Valley legislators are, the 16th and the 18th. And Pat Brown is your incumbent and is your winner over a perennial Democratic candidate, Rick Orlowski. He's run for a number of different offices. Couldn't pull it off tonight against the popular Pat Brown.
That's right. And on to the 18th District, where Lisa Boscola, another incumbent. She's held the seat for quite a few years now. Since 1994, she was able to pull this one off over Matt Connolly, the newcomer, race car driver, taking a shot at office, but Boscola able to hold him off.
Boscola resisting the Republican wave tonight. All right, let's talk about the 16th race again just for a moment. That state Senate race, Lehigh Valley District, where Pat Brown has won once again tonight, and we talked to him a little while ago.
Well, I think it's been a very vigorous debate on the issues, and people are passionate about those beliefs. You know, I've always been someone who's thought that the approach of making sure that the state is competitive fiscally and from a tax perspective is the best way to create opportunities. Rick Orlowski stood for a different approach, and he was passionate about that belief. But in the end, I think that the approach that allows for business to grow and not have additional costs imposed on them, especially in a down economy, is the approach that the voters wanted, and they continue to want, and they've honored me with their support.
Pat Brown, the winner in the 16th District and the State Senate of Pennsylvania. Back to Congress, but rather to the Senate.
Yeah, that's right. On to the U.S. Senate, the race, right? The race that everybody is watching, not only here, but nationwide, really, with Pat Toomey and Joe Sestak. This one has been very tight, with Sestak winning for the majority of the night. Toomey then pulling ahead, and he looks like he has this lead. And according to the AP, he has the lead for good, because they are declaring Pat Toomey the victor in this race right now.
Right. Republican Pat Toomey, the AP says, has won Pennsylvania's bruising and expensive race for U.S. Senate. As Wendy said, one the whole country has been watching. And perhaps we can once again touch base with Chris Borick from Muhlenberg College, who's been kind enough to stay with us all night long. Pat Toomey pulled it out, and you were looking at some of those counties, including, I think, Montgomery, where late returns might have been able to turn the tide for Joe Sestak, but didn't happen.
Yeah, just not enough. And I'm just looking, the only counties that remain are a few districts in Delaware, Chester, and I think Montgomery County, but not enough votes, as the AP said. What a bruising race. You used the right term, Rob. I mean, this was one that was tough all the way, hard fought. Almost, think about this, you know, we're looking about 40, 50,000 vote difference right now out of almost 4 million votes cast. A very tight race, and both candidates fought hard to the end. It's a big night for Pat Toomey. Again, I mentioned earlier in the show, someone that myself and other pundits might have said only a few years ago was too far to the right to win a moderate state like Pennsylvania. Well, tonight he proved pundits wrong, and he was able to pull out an impressive win. And it'll be interesting to see how he makes his way in a slightly controlled Democratic Senate. It should be a big change for him.
Should be. Dr. Borick, thanks once again. Thanks for a little insight there on that race. And again, AP says Pat Toomey has won that.
That's right. And we're going to head out to Delaware County now. Joscelyn Moes is actually at Sestak headquarters, standing by live out there. And Joscelyn, I'm guessing the feeling there not quite as optimistic as it was earlier.
No, we're not hearing nearly as many cheers as we had been earlier in the evening. What a close race, but let me tell you, this room is still packed. I don't think anybody has left as they're waiting for the final tally to be taken. All night long, we've been introducing to people who've been working so hard on this campaign. Right now, I'm going to introduce you to Victoria. Priya, thank you for joining us. Now, you sort of got involved in this late in the game. Tell me about your involvement.
Well, we came up on Sunday afternoon, and we've mostly been knocking on doors in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia.
And how important has that door-to-door sort of get out the vote effort been?
Honestly, I think that is the most important part of a campaign. I mean, face-to-face contact with voters, especially in the GOTV phase of a campaign, that's where you can really make a difference. Talking to voters, getting them out to polls, letting them know where their polling location is, letting them know why it's important to vote, that is what really drives the voters to the polls, I think, and what gives us the numbers that we need.
And there has been a large voter turnout in this area. Now, you've been watching the numbers come in all night long. What's going through your mind right now? The tides have sort of turned a little bit.
Of course, yeah. You know, I mean, this was a race that's always been close. I've been following the polls for a couple weeks now. I have a special connection to Pennsylvania, so this is a race that's been very interesting to me. And so I'm proud of the work that we did, no matter what the results are, because I honestly think that making contact with voters is something that Democrats do that the Republicans just don't do as well. And I think no matter what the result of this election is, we should be proud of the work that we did in Philadelphia and other areas.
All right, very good. Thank you, Victoria, for joining us. But again, the mood here has definitely shifted at the Radnor Hotel. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you, Joscelyn. And we're going to take a look at those numbers again. And now it looks like it could be official right here, as far as our numbers are concerned. Toomey being declared the winner of the Senate race for Pennsylvania. And as we said before, this was a race not only the folks here were keeping an eye on, but really nationwide, and to some degree perhaps a little closer than even Toomey's camp had anticipated.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised there. We saw some polls leading into this where the margin was some days 3 or 4%. We actually saw a +3 for Sestak a week or so ago. So it was varying, but generally speaking, Toomey had the lead going into this. People thought it would be close, and indeed it has been close. We'll talk again in a few minutes, hopefully, with Chris Borick, but I wanted to mention that as the evening has gone on, he has looked smarter and smarter.
That's
because
right.
The Muhlenberg College polls that predicted this race, the final result is coming more and more into line with those polls.
Right.
So looking good.
All right, well, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Okay, and welcome back to our election coverage this evening.
By and large, it has been, as expected, a great Republican night, and the Republican candidates across the U.S. House in many races are winning, and it looks like it'll give the House Republican control of the House for the first time in a few years. And at the state level, Republicans are prevailing, even in the Democratic registration advantage state of Pennsylvania. And of course, one of the big races tonight is the U.S. Senate race with Pat Toomey and Joe Sestak. And we've just in the last break been able to say that it looks like Toomey is the winner in that race.
Yeah, very tight one. Really not a surprise. A lot of people predicting Toomey to win this one, and he did. However, it was really tight for most of the evening, even with Sestak in the lead. And as we watched the numbers, we were surprised at how close it was and how long Sestak was able to hold on to that lead. But in the end, Toomey was able to pull it out.
We hope to hear from him very soon out in Fogelsville. So stay tuned to hear from Pat Toomey live in just a few moments, we think. Congress, just to recap a couple of these races, a close one. Jim Gerlach has been holding on. The AP has declared Jim Gerlach the winner. Don't have the check mark next to his name just yet, but he's had a strong challenge tonight from the Democratic newcomer, Manon Trivedi, in the 6th Congressional District.
All right, and going on to the 7th Congressional District, Patrick Meehan here, able to take this one over the Democrat Brian Lentz. Now, this was the seat held by Sestak, and so obviously the Democrats losing that one, now with the Republicans being able to pick up that seat there, with Patrick Meehan winning over Brian Lentz, and one other candidate there getting just 1% of the votes.
All right, another Republican pickup there, and here we go with another one. Mike Fitzpatrick formerly held this seat, the 8th District Congressional seat, predominantly Bucks County District. He has retaken the seat with a victory in the rematch with Patrick Murphy. And that percentage has been widening as the evening went along, and it's about 54% or so for Mike Fitzpatrick.
That's right. We're looking at the 11th District, another seat here for the Republicans, able to pick it up over longtime incumbent Paul Konjorsky. Now, Barletta, of course, the mayor of Hazleton, making headlines with a lot of the laws he was passing having to do with immigration up there, and he was able to take out a longtime incumbent.
Right, big story in northeastern Pennsylvania. Konjorsky had been in for it seemed like forever.
Yes.
Allison Schwartz has been in for quite a while in the 13th district, Montgomery County, parts of northeast Philadelphia, and she will stay there. Democrat holding on to a seat tonight with a 56% to 44 win over Carson D. Adcock, who was a political newcomer. We may hear from Adcock again.
All right, and a little closer to home here, moving into the 15th congressional district, as we saw before, Charlie Dent giving his victory speech as he beat out John Callahan. A hard-fought race here in the Lehigh Valley. No love lost really there. A lot of ads that were going back and forth between the two, and Dent able to hold on to his seat, however,
and again,
in the end.
Right, sorry. As we check a few more of these congressional races, we remind you to hang in there if you'd like to hear from Pat Toomey. We expect him to be speaking live in Fogelsville very soon. 16th District Congress, Joe Pitts. He's been in office for quite a long time. In fact, he has won an 8th term tonight, and for the 3rd time in a row, beating Lois Herr, the Democratic candidate there in the 16th.
All right, moving on to the 17th District now. Tim Holden able to hold on to his seat over Dave Argall. They're in the 17th District, part of Berks, Lebanon, and Schuylkill counties there. Tim Holden going back to Washington. All
right. In the 8th District, where Mike Fitzpatrick has retaken the office there in Congress, we spoke to Mike Fitzpatrick a little while ago. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Well, I got to tell you, as I traveled through the district, not just today, but in the weeks leading up to the election, it was pretty clear that people are hurting, that the unemployment rate is obviously very high, and when the economic issues are as front and center, the party in power, especially when one party controls the White House and the Senate and the House of Representatives, that party's going to pay the price. And so that's what happened today. I certainly hope that many people came to vote for me and place their confidence in me. I recognize that a lot of people came because they want to change. And so I need to bring all of that together and do as well as I can for the people that have sent me down to the nation's capital.
Mike Fitzpatrick, your winner in the 8th District in Bucks County. Now let's look at the big picture a bit. While the Democrats have been fighting for survival tonight, the Republicans have been hoping to gain enough seats in the House. They needed 39 minimum to take control of the House. They needed 10 to take control of the Senate. They've been pushing for a majority. It looks like they will get that in the House. Correspondent Nicole Collins takes a look now at some of the big national races tonight.
CNN projections point to a major shift in the House of Representatives this election night, with Republicans expected to take control. CNN also projects the first wins for Tea Party-backed candidates. Republicans Rand Paul in Kentucky and Marco Rubio in Florida win their Senate bids. And incumbent Republican Senator Jim DeMint, who is closely aligned with the Tea Party, is also projected by CNN to win re-election in South Carolina.
People have realized that freedom, that their future, that this country is in their hands. It's not in the hands of politicians.
CNN also projects Tea Party favorite Christine O'Donnell will lose her Senate bid to Chris Coons in Delaware, keeping that seat in the hands of Democrats.
While most are saying it's doom and gloom for the Democrats, our scenario all along has been the Republicans are going to win a number of seats, but there are a number of seats we think Dems will pick up.
Democrats remain hopeful about their chances to hold the Senate and for their candidates in tight races like Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
I'm not much of predicting things, so I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
The presumed incoming Speaker of the House, Republican John Boehner, spoke to supporters tonight, saying the new majority is prepared to do things differently. He called tonight's election results a victory for the American people. In Washington, Nicole Collins, 69 News.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Right now at your Quality Plus Ford store, the offer is this. Nothing. 0 down, 0 do it signing. And we'll even make your first month's payment on a new 2011 Escape. It's the sign-in.
Welcome Welcome back to 69 News Election Central. As we cross into Wednesday, I believe we have. Yes, we have. We have a lot of the main storylines of the night done, and one of the big ones, of course, is that Republicans in general have done well at the state of Pennsylvania and New Jersey levels, and in Congress as well.
That's right. The big race, of course, well, several big races, but the big one that most of the country was keeping the eye on was the race for Senate with Toomey and Sestak. Now, right now, Toomey declared the winner in that race, and we're actually waiting to hear from him. In the meantime, we're going to talk to our political expert that we have on hand here, Dr. Borick from Muhlenberg College. And it seemed like it was tight for a while, but then in the end,